Hmm. Well, good morning, dear friends. Can you hear me? Yes, great. Good morning to those of you joining us on YouTube and Facebook, Ustream. Nice to have you aboard this morning. And to the Zoomers, good morning. It's a little cold here in the BBC headquarters. The Buddha Broadcasting, it's not really a corporation, is it? The Buddha Broadcasting Center. I'm Robert Beatty, and I'm broadcasting from eastern Beaverton in the Portland, Oregon area. I've discovered that there are folks discovering this from different parts of the country, so nice to have you joining us. Check out our website, portlandinsight.org. There's enough there that you could start reading and listening and go on for the rest of your life, probably. So, it's another morning. The sun line reached here, I guess dawn was an hour ago anyway. It was very quiet dawn. Morning, waking up. And to all of those of you who are joining this broadcast, making the incredibly wise decision to come together and practice. Finding our way through the early morning consciousness to see what we can discover through meditation. And a reading from the Dhammapada. This is starting at stanza 100. There's still some space available in the Dhammapada class that I'm offering tomorrow night, Wednesday night, and then for a series of 8 Wednesday nights. Here's a little sample from a translation by Gil Fronsdale. Better than 1,000 meaningless statements is one meaningful word, which having been heard brings peace. Better than 1,000 meaningless verses is one meaningful line of verse, which having been heard brings peace. Better than reciting 100 meaningless verses is one line of Dharma, which having been heard brings peace. Greater in combat than a person who conquers 1,000 times 1,000 people is the person who conquers herself. Certainly it is better to conquer oneself than others, for someone who is self-restrained and always lives with mastery, neither a god nor Mara and Brahma together could turn conquest into defeat. Better than 1,000 ritual sacrifices offered every month for 100 years is one moment's homage offered to one who has cultivated herself. Better than 100 years in the forest tending a ritual fire is one moment's homage offered to one who has cultivated himself. Whatever sacrifice or offering a merit seeker might perform in an entire year is not worth 1/4 as much as expressing respect to those who are upright. And it goes on. Better than 100 years lived with an unsettled mind devoid of virtue is one day lived virtuous and absorbed in meditation. There's the very book. All right, so let us begin this morning with a chanting and reflection on the Loving Kindness Sutta. This is a time in which all aspects of humanity are being revealed. There are actions of extraordinary greed, hatred, and delusion occurring. For those with an inclination toward harming others or benefiting from the suffering of others, there's plenty of room for it now. For those who are intending to cultivate love and compassion, there's plenty of room for that now too. So here's a lovely intention, a loving intention, a description of how it is, how it would be to live with loving kindness uppermost in our consciousness. So I invite you to join me in this chant and to reflect upon the words as we're saying them. Now let us chant the Buddha's words on loving kindness. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Those are some beautiful ideas, aren't they? Well, I'm comforted again to be with all of you. How fortunate we are to have this technology to bring us together at such a time. So please find a way to sit comfortably upright. If you're supported, let your support be just a little bit at the low back. The higher the support goes on your back, the more likely one is to fall into sleep. So let's begin, or continue rather, with a few moments of gratitude. Any one of us who has one of these fancy electronic devices, power to run it, you probably have hot running water in your home. You can wash your hands whenever you want. Probably a warm place to sleep. Some fancy pharmaceuticals to keep the body functioning. And here we are with the Buddha's teachings. What a great good fortune. A moment of gratitude for our teachers. Think of your teachers that you've had in this lifetime. The second grade teacher who changed your life, or my 10th grade teacher who taught me Canadian history and loved me, who gave me some responsibilities to run the ski club, and he cared for me, changed my life. And Ruth Dennison. Think of the giants upon whose shoulders you stand. And now, a different direction. A non-direction in a way. The signs all point to be here now. Be here now. This moment. Coming home to the body. A few eye blinks ago you were conceived. Conceived, to be thought of. You were born. You went through extensive somebody training that continues. And you are here now. The body is the slowest changing aspect of a human, so it's relatively stable to find. So there's sensations, a life, and there's awareness that knows them. Please receive the life of the feet, of the hands, take your time. Actually connect with now the face. The cheeks, the lips, the eyes. And notice that you may be able to feel the sensations of the air that streams into the nostrils or streams out of the nostrils. Or perhaps it's more distinct breathing as the rising and falling, expanding and contracting of the chest and abdomen. Whichever location is more stable, apparent for you. Settle in there as that, with that as your object of concentration. There may well be thoughts, memories, plans, worries that appear magically in the mind. Neither attach to them nor start a war with them. Simply notice what they are, these mental formations. They come into being, and they go out of being. Sometimes you'll get lost in a wandering mind for quite some time. Seconds, minutes. And it doesn't really matter, because there comes that moment of waking up. And there's awareness of what's happening. And then you can choose to come home to breathing. Simplify. And each breath, each experience has a beginning and an ending. We sit here as a moment of awareness in which life happens. There may well be sounds around you. And very fortunately, this style of practice does not require silence. In fact, it can be practiced in the most cacophonous of environments. It's more pleasant in quiet, in silence, or with natural sounds around. Simply notice any sound that captures attention, that draws you away from the breath. Notice it as sound, as hearing, as beginning and ending. Notice also the meaning-making, the perception-making nature of mind. A sound occurs and the mind says, that's a crow, or that's a car rolling by. The mind identifies things, perceives them, makes meaning of them. Not a problem. Just come home when you can to the actual phenomenon of in-breathing and out-breathing. This present moment is exactly like this, as it is. It might be a moment of extraordinary delight and pleasure and ease. Or it might be a moment of anguish, grief, despair, anger, confusion, fear. The heart could be filled with love, or it could be contracted like a stone, like a piece of coal. Our task is to awaken to how it is. And in the space of that knowing, we plant the seeds of our awakening. We cultivate mindfulness and curiosity and persistence, concentration and tranquility, equanimity and joy. There's a tremendous momentum of vipaka, the results of former actions, creating the present moment. The Buddha's great breakthrough occurred when he discovered that the present is as it is, and it somehow mysteriously includes the capacity to act with some intention, to become more awake, to become more loving and compassionate. It seems too good to be true that simply cultivating mindfulness and concentration can set us free. bringing to mind the Metta or Loving Kindness Sutta. Cultivating loving kindness in all directions. As a mother protects her child, her only child, bringing this energy of openness, of willingness, of caring into all our actions. Imagine with great love doing the dishes, or cooking dinner, or working at your computer, or using the chainsaw. Form the intention to approach this day with as much love as you can, beginning with yourself. If you run into unworthiness, recognize that it's just malware. It's just some programming that you learned very early in your life, maybe even pre-verbally. And just love that part too. As we open into the present moment. And soon to take our place in the active world. I want to end our sitting this morning with a reading from a teacher of mine named Matt Flickstein. It's called Living from a Non-Dual Perspective. Please just let these words flow over you and through you. Everything that arises disappears. Whatever is born dies. Nothing escapes the cycle of birth and death. It is crucial for us to directly and experientially realize that there is never a point in time when something exists and is not in the process of becoming something other than it was just a moment before. All suffering comes from attachment, trying to hold on to that which is perpetually changing. And all attachment comes from delusion. We need to learn to live in the clarity and space of non-attachment or non-clinging, neither grasping nor pushing anything away. The key is to just be present with what arises from moment to moment, without holding or resisting. At the same time, it is essential not to fall into the trap of denying the relative existence of our psychophysical organism and the world of experience it represents. Compassion is the willingness to play in the field of dreams even though you are awake. Approach life with joy, enthusiasm, love, and an open heart. Take delight in the manifestations of life. It is all a play of consciousness, and it is really all play. If something appears serious or burdensome, even death, then we are lost in delusion. The field of dreams is this world of the senses with all its myriad forms. Being awake is the direct knowing there is no one who suffers, no one who is born, and no one who dies. It is the five aggregates that are born and die. Who we are really has never been born and never dies. There's a little bit more. In actuality, there is no one who is expressing compassion to anyone else. It's all a part of the play. The world is our mirror. There's only consciousness rising and falling along with its objects. It is all selfless. Whatever we see as being real is a projection of our own mind. It is where our mind is stuck or identified with the illusion. Nothing exists. Nothing, not even nothing. Existence and non-existence are both concepts. Not holding anywhere is freedom beyond measure. We must die to each moment and allow life to express itself through us and as us. Our lives will probably not turn out the way in which the ego has imagined, but when we surrender to the truth of what is, we will find freedom beyond measure, as surely as the river finds its way to the sea. When we move beyond the dualistic world, there is a rebirth into the deathless. We finally come home to a place that we have never really left. Please now take another moment to be appreciative of yourself. Perhaps to repeat the great love mantra, I love you, with your name at the end a few times. And then slowly bring yourself to eyes open. Notice seeing. Take a deep breath or two and stretch a little bit. And take a moment maybe to lean forward if you need to and get close to the screen and scan a few frames and see, here we are. Here we are. This is our little community of practice. How fortunate we are. Lovely. I'm going to share my screen for a moment, see if this will work. It will. This is my morningly intention to invite you to enjoy the delight of generosity. This is the PIMC webpage. You can go here to donate now. You can go here to this one. And this is for the, if you want to direct donations specifically to different events that happen. There's the morning meditation. Click here to donate. Here's Jim's Monday night. Here's the Tuesday morning peer-led group. Gary Sanders, Wednesday Wake Up. Oh, I received a letter from someone very thoughtful. This is a very masculine group of people. And we're very aware of that. And hang on, I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Come back to me. We're very aware of that issue, and how it came about was when it occurred to me 5 or 7 years ago, more than that, that clearly I needed to train some next generation teachers, and I invited my senior students, the people who'd been on retreats with me, and it was pretty close to an even balance. And then it was a 3-year program and was quite a commitment. 2 almost week-long retreats a year and lots of reading and stuff. And people dropped out. And I don't think it was because of misogyny or lack of welcome. But what was left at the end was there were 7 men and 3 women. One of the women is Paige Freeborn. She lives in Vancouver. And so we have Christine and Kate now, and they don't have weekly groups, and I keep encouraging them to teach. But we do think about this, and some ideas in the works. It's very difficult or impossible to just bring someone in. Here, advertise on Craigslist, a wanted, very mature, Buddhist educated woman who can help bring our center to greater balance. So anyway, we're aware of that. And fundamentally, of course, the Dharma has nothing to do with gender. But it would be wonderful to have some greater balance in that. So thank you to that person that wrote that very nice letter. So now I'd like to open it up to you folks, to our deeper, our wise community voice. What's happening in your practice today? How is it as this coronavirus time drags on? It's very interesting to watch the rebellion occurring, fomented by the commander-in-chief as social order begins to crumble. It's a little frightening. So what's up with you? Quiet. How nice. Oh, someone.
It's Pamela.
Hello, is this you, Diana?
No, it's Pamela. I'm not sure why the...
There you are. Hi, Pamela.
Hi. One of the things I've noticed, and as...
Oh.
But what I've noticed is whenever I start meditating more seriously and more conscientiously, the first thing that comes up is rage. And for a couple of weeks now, I've just been awful. And I've just been crabby. And I finally realized that this has happened before when my practice gets more active and more present. I'm just rageful, and I don't know sort of where to go with that.
Progress in meditation. So, meditation, particularly when we do it more, will begin an archaeological process where parts of ourself that were previously very effectively repressed, pushed out of consciousness, will begin to make their debut. I grew up really with I was never angry when I was young, because I was suppressing it all. I didn't know that I was angry. The people around me knew that I was angry. And the first long 2-month retreat I did, there was a morning when I got up and there was no yogurt. And I let them know. I told them, there's no yogurt. And the second in command guy took me out in the garden and said, "Robert, there's something about you. You're always so nice to everybody. And there's a danger with people like that, because down underneath, they're filled with rage, and sometimes it leaps out." And something happened inside me at that moment. I didn't know what it was. It was a huge outbreak of rage. And then he said, "Have a nice day." And so I have many stories of the way that I grappled with and did some improvement in my capacity to be angry in a conscious, skillful way. But I'd like to propose, this is really wonderful, not wonderful, this is really important for you, that this, what's emerging is affect, emotion, thoughts that has been buried for a long time. And that the task is to let it come to consciousness and to love it. And to do your best not to act it out very much. To not do harm with it. And things are to practices you can try. Go to your meditation spot. Really root yourself there. Maybe do the refuge chants. And then turn toward the anger. And see what's there. Or start writing. Write a letter that's filled with hatred and anger and the objects, the people, places, things that the thoughts are about. Go toward that. Or to in some way use your body to beat on a bed with a tennis racket or something, or to stomp. And these are all ways of bioenergetic ways of activating it so that you can see it better. And the purpose is not to have a, a huge explosion of anger, though that might happen sometime or sometimes. The purpose is to be in conscious and present with the emergence of this buried treasure. How's that?
Sounds good. I just didn't know where to go with it. And I will say, I don't see an object for my anger. I just feel rageful.
Yeah. Now, one of the ways I think of that, and comes from my psychotherapy background, a lot of what's layered into our personalities happens in the first 2 or 3 years. When we're not verbal, when we don't have an ego yet to figure things out. And so sometimes there is a kind of inchoate rage, which is just, and then it's still the same practice. See where you can feel it in your body, act it a little bit to see, to amplify it. There's another story I've told many times of being in a conflict with a former partner of mine, and we got to a place in the conversation where I was totally overwhelmed, and so I said, I'll be back in half an hour, I've got to go for a walk. I went for a walk in a park, and I walked around the park. It was raining, and I stomped around the park, and I was a crazy person. I could hardly find my feet, but I was stomping and acting this out. And then it was 0.7 of a mile. And by the time I got around once, I had moments of clarity, and then gradually I became more conscious, and then I was walking, and then there'd be outbursts of this thing, and then by the end of the time I got around the second time, I was able to go home and have a sensible conversation. But the rage wasn't about her, it was from earlier in my life. And so that was a very powerful meditation, walking around that park. It wasn't just walking, it was intentionally trying to be in the present. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yay, great, important question for many of us. There was a time in my late 20s, early 30s, when I discovered how much rage I had toward my mother, and I had to stop communicating with her for a time. Because to communicate with her would have been horrific and damaging.
It's
Michael. Hey.
Oh, it's Russell.
Oh, Russell. Oh, okay.
I'll be brief. Comment. I've hardly heard anything you and Pamela said, because your acknowledgement of Trump's fomenting social disorder and disintegration my old friend Terror came back. I don't get anxious very much anymore about anything, including dying. But for some reason, terror just arose with that for me, just like a wave. And his sociopathy is by far the most problematic part. And I guess I just wanted to say, if for any others who are out there who have this response, when you really look at what's happening, you're not alone. It is. It's not, for me, not just a little frightening, it's kind of terrifying. So I hang out with the terror because I've been there before for other things. But it's, wow. I guess the other part is how vulnerable I feel at my age, and I'm not prepared for a complete breakdown of the social disorder. That's for damn sure. So I don't mean to be quite so weighty in my comments, but it just was striking to me the power with which that emerged. And it'll pass.
Thanks, Russ. Michael.
Just wanted to comment a little bit about what Pamela was talking about, and you as well. I grew up very much aware of what a temper I had and what anger I carried with me. And honestly, in the last 10 years or so, it would be really hard pressed to be able to identify something I was mad at or angry with. And this last week, I think Russ is probably one of them. People have been going through this exercise from Gregory's Wednesday night group of trying to kind of pay attention to what triggers you, what really brings a response to you. And it's been very interesting for me as I just go through my day, taking a walk around the neighborhood, to see what little things really bring a big reaction. And often it's a reaction of anger that I don't think I was really aware that I was carrying with me. I won't go into details. I don't have my little journal with me right now. But some of the little things that have triggered anger with me have really been an eye-opener for me to see whether they're the basis of it or simply a trigger for something else, how real they've been this week. So I urge you, if you have the wherewithal to do it, to try and just pay attention maybe during one day and just say, oh my God, what really triggered me today? Because it's really an interesting exercise.
Thanks, Michael.
Robert, I had a non-COVID
Hi, Jim.
idea. First of all, I want to thank you for doing this morning session. I think I've meditated more in the last 5 days than in the last 5 months. So something.
It's an improving curve, it would appear.
And I look forward. I don't set my alarm or anything, but I sort of seem to wake up in time to have my cup of coffee. And
Caution, meditation is habit forming.
But what I noticed today for the first time, as I was staying with my breath, is I was perfectly calm. My heart certainly wasn't racing, I wasn't trying to become aware of it, but there was my heart beating. I felt it very, very clearly in the stillness, and I'm sure it's no different than it's ever been before, but this is the first time it really came to consciousness that with each beat, feeling it. So it was interesting that way, and then I began to think, well, that could be the subject of meditation just as well as the breath. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's remarkable how we manage to filter out that experience, that we don't feel and hear our hearts all the time, because it's right there all the time. So, and yes, take it as your object for a while and see what happens. Thanks.
Hey Robert, it's Luna.
Luna, good morning.
I woke up just incredibly sad and feeling this pull between how much suffering there is. People that we know that are in Mexico that have no safety net, who aren't eating. And then realizing that there's only so much I have that I can give, but I feel so blessed. It's like this, it's so hard. I feel helpless, I guess.
Yeah.
And a bit guilty. I'm not stuck in a little hovel, and I have sanitation. And yesterday, one of the things I learned about COVID that was terrifying was that they've just discovered that it's transmittable through feces, which means that all the places in the world that have no sanitation are just so much more fucked than they already were. And I just, I feel like there's nothing I can do. I can't even do something if I want to go do it. That feeling of like, I just want to go volunteer somewhere or do something, and there's no, it's like, and the only thing that I feel like I can do, which is to share or give money to people. I have a responsibility to my own life right now, financially, and that's just, I don't know, it's just a really hard place to be sitting with.
Heartbreaking. So how open do we dare let ourselves be to the suffering of the world?
Yeah, and I will say that at the same time, I'm increasingly intolerant of the amount of idiotic thinking and selfish, greedy, hateful stuff that's going on. I mean, even little stuff like somebody stole something from my business, and it's just like, really, people? Like, haven't I had enough? But no, it's like there's just this sense of taking. Let me take more. And it doesn't matter if you're down, let me just take more. And people in my neighborhood have been broken into, and people's bikes have been stolen. And I mean, there's just a lot of that happening. And it's just like, I just want to say, come on, people. Like, ugh. So you're right. I mean, you started this conversation with, there's more room for evil and there's more room for love, and they're both present, and they're both hard.
How familiar are you with the 4 Brahma Viharas, the loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity?
I'm just at the beginning of learning.
Sharon Salzberg has a great book. It's been around for decades now. It's called Loving Kindness.
I actually listened to her this morning.
Yeah.
I listened to her meditation, and then I said, I still need another one. So I came here.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's, in the words of Ajahn Sumedho, in love, the experience of love, there's room for everything. There's this capacity to allow everything to be as it is. When love encounters suffering, it turns to compassion. And you're having a lot of that. And you've got the suffering in your own life and the people around you, and then you open up to the world, and and you've been places. This gets me. Whenever something's happening somewhere that I know I've been, I mean, India, the trains have stopped running in India. at any moment in ordinary life, there's 3 million people on the Indian trains. It's like a city. And they've shut it down, and they're converting the train cars to hospitals.
Wow.
India.
Wow.
And those people living on the streets for whom a cardboard box is tremendous shelter, with babies, with children. It's the death toll in such countries is going to be millions. And then poverty, abject poverty following that. So that's the compassion door opens. When love meets success and happiness, it turns to sympathetic joy and delight. And you also know about that. And then there's the fourth one that we often don't talk about, which is little understood, is equanimity. And that's the movement into that space that Matt Flickstein was talking about, where there really isn't a problem in the big picture, that beings come into being and then they go out of being, and it's this ferment of life that happens. But our identification is almost always with I, me, mine, and this. And so one of the reasons for going deeper and deeper in our meditation is to be able to move to that place where it's the world is as it is. This is the way of the world, not through my karmic actions or wishing. And do people have their experience? It's because this is their experience, their own destiny in a way. And that can seem hard-hearted. It's like, well, don't you care? Well, it's understood as a balance to compassion. Because if we move into compassion, then it turns into sympathy, and then it sets off our own early sadnesses and so on, and then we can get lost in that. It's very important. That's why it's important in sitting meditation to learn how to come back to the breath and suppress stuff. There's suppressing it and also transcending it, which is through really awakening to the impersonal nature of it all. And right now you're having a big opening. And that's, knowing you as I do, that's very beautiful upon you. And hard as hell, though. Yeah. When it comes down to the nature of people stealing bikes, there's a breakdown. There's a coming together and more love and compassion available, and there is this dark side of humanity which is rearing its very ugly head. And in our case, led from the top, which is profoundly disturbing.
So true.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we've reached, oh my goodness, it's already 8:04. Anybody else sitting with something? So often there's just something there that needs to be spoken.
I just have a quick question, Robert.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine. Oh, there you are. Hi.
I was wondering, this week I've been thinking a lot about hope. I mostly, in like people in society, I always hold on to just hope that when people are going through trials or whatever, just that they'll be able to see some light in the future, sometime, somewhere. And so living with what is right now, but then holding on to this hope that everything changes and there could be a good change in the future. But hope is not living as it is either. So I'm wondering what the Buddhist views are on having hope.
The Buddha didn't talk about hope. However, I talked with Joanna Macy about this one time, and our task is not to become either hopeful or hopeless. Our task is to be in reality as it is. And hope can be kind of a how about this? when hope is there, let us hope mindfully and realize that what's happening is hoping. And we're creating a fantasy image of how it might be in the future and so on. And we do that a lot. But let's do something much more, which is to go really deep, deep down into the taproot of our understanding and wisdom as well. But also, let's not go into hopelessness, because that's another trance state. But there's the present moment where both of those can occur. But if we can take them much less seriously, we'd be well off. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes people use hope as a way to deny reality.
Yeah.
John died of COVID, blah blah blah, but we're I guess it's a different track. I was going to say, but he's taken a transfer to a higher level, so there's no need to grieve. I mean, it's kind of insane, but common.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Robert, this is Heather.
Hello, Heather. I see you.
I'm thinking, I think about hope a lot, actually, and I often, to me, hope is sort of hopeless in and of itself. It feels for me like a sort of an empty space, and so for me, rather than hope, I feel like I have to simply be and move forward from where I am, and not. For me, hope is very passive. The thought of hope. So rather than when I think, oh, I just need to hope about this, then I feel very helpless. And instead, I need to just be and say, well, what can I do right now? And right now. And right now.
Amen.
And that's what I have to say.
Joanna Macy co-authored a book called Active Hope. And it's about all the things one can do to deeply dive into one's own psyche and then to come forward and then to act. Yeah. Thanks. Some feelings there, huh? How wonderful that you're so alive, that we're all so alive. Well, friends, it's 10 after 8. Sorry to interrupt as we're beginning to get very participatory, but it's time. I hope to see you tomorrow. I'm going to unmute. Here we are. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And a word on that word happy. It's really a bad translation. It's from the Mangalam Sutta, and it says, it translates as, may all beings receive all blessings. So may all beings know the happiness of freedom from identification with the ups and downs and the sickness and health and so on. May all beings become awakened is really the wish. So, okay, my dears. Till soon, till tomorrow, perhaps.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Allison.
Nice to see you all.
Bye. Bye, Robert. Thank you.
Goodbye, Connie.
Bye,
Goodbye,
Allison.
dear friends
Bye.
on YouTube
Bye,
Bye, Sam.
and Facebook.
Robert.